Welcome to Season 6 of Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real. Introducing corporate leaders who have taken the leap to business owner, introducing their great idea in our guest blog, found on shareyourstories.online. Our guest joins us from Kitchener, Ontario. Kathy Baldwin is a Life Purpose Concierge, coach, podcast host, and the author of Unlearning the C.R.A.P and Embracing Empowerment. Let's find out how this science geek is using an acronym to get our attention for positive change. It is my pleasure to introduce and welcome Kathy.
Thank you, Trish, for having me. I am so excited.
You know, I have to say that you have to give us a heads up on the acronym for your book. What does Unlearning the C.R.A.P mean?
Absolutely. Well, C.R.A.P is an acronym for Condition Responses and Automatic Programming. It has to do with the neuroprogramming that goes with our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. But just like the way we use the word in our life, it is also a physical manifestation of what happens to those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And so just like the physical excrement, we must release it from our body or it becomes toxic and it makes us sick. And so when we leave those suppressed condition responses and automatic programming within our body, we avoid them, we don't look at them, we don't address them, we will change our gut microbiome. We will create inflammation, autoimmune diseases. The root cause of almost every single disease is from that.
Well, I have to say you're definitely a science geek, because your description of how we need to take a look at the acronym and the application to everyday life definitely is backed in science and obviously research. So
Absolutely.
Give us a little bit of an indication, because, you know, tell us what you did in your former life when you decided to flip the switch and jump the bridge into self-employment, because clearly your bio talks about the fact that you've spent a lot of your academic career in research, development, and in the sciences.
Well, yes, that was my personal trajectory. It was my personal passion. Mm-hmm. So I would study everything from human development to neuroprogramming, biology, psychology, all of that. Every time something came into my life, I needed to know more about it. But my working world was the traditional corporate, a sales operation. And I would take all of these things that I would learn on my personal, and I would integrate them into creating successful sales teams, building business operations. And it worked beautifully for everybody but me, because I didn't integrate it into my own life.
It worked until it didn't, right?
Yes.
Right? Isn't that what they say?
Well, it worked as soon as I started to put myself on the list and integrate it within my own life.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I love the actual phrase that you use. You know, if you go to your website, it is a Life Purpose Concierge. And yeah. I love you've got a real way with words, I have to tell you, because not only is the acronym very catchy, but a Life Purpose Concierge is even more, you know, inviting. And it actually asks you the question, you want to know more. As soon as you hear that phrase, you want to know more. So tell me a little bit about the marketing, because clearly you've got some great ideas. Like the concierge, I love that word, because it just says so much more than coach.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. That really means a lot. Everything that I do and believe, everything that's written about in my books and on my podcast is all that everything we need, we already have within ourselves. Right. So when we're looking externally for things to change, I think that's when we're led on somebody else's path. And we need to come back to self. So as that, I'm not a coach. I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to help somebody unpack that. But what I will do is help them find their crap, their condition responses and automatic programming, help remove it through self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-healing, so they can get to self-empowerment. And then the concierge part is my world, because I believe that everything is integrated and interrelated. We all have our own individual zone of genius. And so I've been able to meet so many people and connect and collaborate with them who have various zones of genius. And so the concierge part is I introduce them to the next person who can take them on that specialized need that they have, because somebody's zone of genius is somebody else's challenge.
Oh, I love that we all have a genius side to what it is that we do. And
Yeah.
I really, that the marrying of genius and concierge really resonates with me, because I love the way that you say, you are who you are, you've worked on yourself. We all have challenges and barriers that we have to break in order to achieve whatever level of success we feel is important to us. But sometimes we just need that unbiased third person to go, hey, you know what, you are really great at this, but maybe we might want to take a look at that, and that might help you. If we change that, that's only going to add to your level of success. And that's really what you're saying is you become the voice of reason, shall we say, right? The person who's in the background saying, you can really do this, and here's how I think you might be able to apply that to what your goals and objectives are.
Absolutely. And if it's not my zone of genius, I may be able to articulate that place, but I'm going to introduce you to the person that I think is most aligned to get you there.
Right.
I'm not going to try to be all to everybody. I'm owning my own zone of genius, which is a bridge, a disruptor.
And I love the fact that you've made peace with who you are, because you cannot do the work that you're doing if you have not made peace with yourself, to be able to say, this is what I'm really great at. I'm really great at those things. So when I'm not really great at those things, I'll find someone that I can introduce you to that will help you cross that bridge, because it's not me.
Absolutely. And I believe that we all need to stand up and not think that we're bragging and not think that we're being conceited, to say, I am really good at this. Like,
Right.
Trish, you are an amazing artist.
Thank you.
You should be able to stand and say, I'm really good at this.
Right.
And own it and be proud of it.
That's such I'm like you. I can toot your horn till the cows come home. But if I have to stand on the soapbox and toot my own horn, I'm not really that comfortable with that. And I think that's a human nature thing, right?
I think it's part of the crap that we were conditioned to keep us small, because how can we be part of a system that only takes care of the 1% at the expense of 99% if each and every one of us are owning our zone of genius and living fully aligned and empowered?
That's so true. Now tell us a little bit about your podcast, because clearly your podcast is giving people an opportunity to own and share their genius.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I have been able to curate the most amazing people, and I'm still every day, because we cannot be siloed in our lives. Even though our current structures, our medical, our education, our economic, everything is siloed. We are integrated, interrelated beings living within an integrated, interrelated system. Everything matters and everything affects everything else. Right. So we can't have business success if we have health issues. We can't have thriving relationships if we are dealing with mental health, and so on. And so because of that, that's part of how I've curated all of these amazing experts. that I can say, look, I have someone here who's an expert in hormones and an expert here in affiliate marketing and, any other area.
Right, right. Now, how do you find the guests for your podcast who obviously open the doors to giving you an opportunity to be a concierge for their own, recipe for genius? Because that's a very narrow market niche, which is excellent. That's what we're supposed to do. But how do you tap into meeting those people?
I utilize just about everything, just like how I met you at a networking event, went and put myself out there, but I'm also still a constant student. So as I'm out and I'm finding people with genius, I am inviting them to come on the podcast. Or I have a automated system that has potential guests who are wanting to promote themselves, that they can come through my system and say, hey, I'm feeling aligned. Let's talk, let's connect.
Oh, that's a really important factor, because I think for a viewing and listening audience who have a great idea and they have a product or service that they want to take to the world or to their community, the biggest stumbling block or the biggest barrier is, how do I talk to them? How do I make that connection, right? And I think we're all using social media channels to put the message out there, to provide us with some credibility, to perhaps open the door and stumble upon someone who we've never met. And it kind of gives us that sort of prospect list. But I think when you mention that you have a process that you use that helps people to make that connection, is it through social media, your outreach? Is that the primary target?
No, actually, it's from connections of meeting people and asking for referrals. And who do you recommend? Or it is people to people. We need to come back to community. We need to come back to collaboration.
Very true, right? I mean, that's the whole premise of Share Your Stories, is all about visibility, collaboration, and community. I mean, that's what we do. We don't get together to sell to one another. We get together to establish relationships so that we can provide trusted referrals. That's really the whole premise for the passion project that I've developed. So I love the alignment between the marketing that you're doing, the phraseology that you use to kind of wake us up a little bit, because when you read some of those things, sometimes that's all we need. We need that little bit of a jolt to go, hey, I need to learn more about this. What is Kathy actually talking about? So it opens the door to the curiosity.
Yeah.
Which can then to lead to collaboration and community, right?
It also challenges the status quo of a good girl and a nice girl. Right. There are so many layers to my C.R.A.P methodology, because one of the things that I say is everything is information. So if my use of the word C.R.A.P creates a strong reaction to someone, that is your soul giving you information.
So true, right? It's the jolt. It's the educational component or the visual connection that you need to get you out of your comfort zone, to say, I need to know more. Maybe this can help me. Give us a little bit of an indication as to the folks that you have on your podcast. Is there a commonality? Would you say that the light bulb moments happen after 40? Do they happen after 50? Are the light bulb moments just when we become curious? Is there a connection or a way that we can relate to when we actually emotionally and spiritually and physically look for new opportunities?
That's not a simple answer, because it's a yes, 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 yes. Yes, our bodies chemically change in around the 40s, 50s, which changes for women, they've proven that when we go through menopause, it reduces our estrogen. When it reduces the estrogen, it reduces that self-sacrificing that women are naturally prone to do. So now we start to wake up and we start to say, oh, well, what else is there? And we start to become more self-aware. But then we also have different life challenges that happen, whether it's divorce, life, job changes, health issues, that whatever that is that stirs us to say something is missing. And it wakes us up out of complacency. And it is why I call it your soul is calling. It is that wake up call.
Right. And that can happen really, as you say, for most of us, it happens later in life, because I have certainly found in the stories that we share, most of the folks who decide to take the leap to entrepreneurship are doing it definitely after 40, and most often after 50, because they've learned the skills that they need in their job. Then they've said, okay, this business model is not working for me anymore. I'm looking for something else. And then they take the leap into entrepreneurship. So it's almost like our 20s and 30s were the sponge for the education and the learning, right? And then when we get to our 40s and 50s, we start to look at things from a different perspective. And that's really what I love about the alignment that you talk about. I think that, would you say that the personal quality that we need to have in order to move to that next level, whether it's personal and professional success, is curiosity?
Curiosity is probably the thing that will spark it, but it is facing the truth, coming to self-acceptance, understanding that we are in a massive paradigm shift within all structures of our world. We are having exponentially fast changes. So we are being affected in so many different ways to being called to our zone of genius, to coming back to personal alignment and personal homeostasis. So it's a multi-layer answer to that.
You know, what's really interesting is that I was invited to be a guest on a podcast recently, and I got to thinking, I started my first business in 1993. So we know how long ago that was. And people are shocked when they hear there were no cell phones. We didn't have laptop computers, and there wasn't any Google. So when you think about, sometimes the calling comes at a different time for different people. And then we muddle through to our own level of success, whatever that may be. But then we always have an awakening moment. There's always an aha moment, and maybe many of them throughout that time, right?
I believe that our lives are like a staircase that does not have an end destination, which is what level up means, is that every time we reach a place where we say, we're here, no, there's another step. There's another growth. There's another evolution. There's another dream. There's another more.
You know what I love, Kathy, is that you are very equipped at using words to create a visual picture.
That's how my brain works.
Yeah. And I think what's really important, though, is a lot of people miss that in their marketing, right? We're so concentrating on the product or the service, or using buzzwords that we think are going to attract attention. But what we actually do, in addition to sharing our stories, is we have to make the visual connection that people will be able to see what it is that we're trying to share.
Yeah.
And I think that you've done an amazing job at that. Seriously. I mean, with the cover of your book, the title of your book, to the fact that you call yourself a life purpose concierge, the fact that you've just mentioned that life is like a staircase and there's always another step. All of those things are really very powerful visual messages. And I'd like to really thank you for sharing those things with us, because I think that if anyone is like-minded to us in making those visual you've connected the dots. You've given us the breadcrumbs to take us to a place where it's okay to be curious. It's okay to feel that there needs to be something more. And I think that's really the important part of the work that you're doing.
Thank you. You just edified and allowed my mission and vision to know that I'm being seen, and that is part of what's really important in each and every one of us, is knowing and having that feedback loop. Thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, I would like you to wrap up our conversation today, because in each of the guest blog series, we ask folks to share 3 words of advice. So connect with our viewing and listening audience by giving them the reason why intimately know thyself is important to you in the work that you do.
Absolutely. Just like I was saying earlier, everybody and everything matters. All of our gifts, all of our purpose, our peace, our passion, our prosperity, everything resides inside of us. And if we don't know ourselves intimately because we're too busy living from an empty cup, giving away, self-sacrificing, people pleasing, trying to be part of the shoulds, and we're not going inward, then what was the purpose of being alive? We were born to live our life, our purpose, our dreams. We weren't born to be plastic, replaceable, or dispensable.
Well, I think that you've given our viewing and listening audience so many amazing tidbits of information. And I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this edition of Keeping It Real and introducing us to your genius.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy and an honor.
To our viewing and listening audience, I think you've learned some really wonderful little gifts today from Kathy, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this edition of Keeping It Real, where we introduce you to the person behind the logo. If you'd like to connect with our guest, you'll find Kathy's information in the contact information and description portion below. I'm Trish Tonai, author, artist, and the founder and host of the series, and we invite you to share your business story. Just visit our website, shareyourstories.online, and subscribe to our channel, Business Mentorship, Keeping It Real. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting you next time when we share another great idea.